Hello, and welcome to Robotics in the OR, the unsung heroes of sterile processing. I'm Corda White, and today we're going to take a deep dive into the critical role of the sterile processing department in robotic surgery. Robotic surgery has revolutionized the way surgeons operate, but what many people don't see is the expertise required behind the scenes to ensure that every instrument is safe, sterile, and ready for each procedure. It is imperative that these instruments are sterile. It's life or death. So in this episode, we'll talk about the challenges SPD technicians face, how they clean and assemble delicate robotic instruments, the importance of following manufacturer instructions for use, or better known as IFUs. Also, some strategies to minimize errors in reprocessing. So let's really get into the basics. Robotic surgery uses instruments that are extremely delicate and often multi-part. These instruments require special handling from the moment they are used until they are sterilized and ready for the next case. So this means that SPD technicians have a variety of responsibilities. So one of those responsibilities would be decontamination. Immediately after surgery, instruments are wiped. Instruments are wiped down and placed in decontamination trays. Robotic instruments are often sensitive to harsh cleaning chemicals or even high pressure sprays. So SPDs must follow the manufacturer's IFU carefully. It is very imperative in the sterile processing process to follow the instructions for use. SPD technicians are also responsible for inspection. Every robotic instrument is inspected for damage, proper articulation, and cleanliness. Even a tiny residue or even a bent component can compromise function and patient safety. Also, SPD's technicians are also responsible for assembly. Robotic instruments often have multiple components, like robotic arms, tips, or even end effectors, which they have to be reassembled precisely according to the IFU. Improper assembly can lead to reprocessing errors or OR delays, or even worse, patient complications. Worst case scenario. So, for example, a study in the Journal of Hospital Infection found that improperly cleaned or assembled robotic instruments were one of the leading causes of instrument failure in the OR. Wow. This emphasizes just how critical SPDs are to patient safety. I want to get into reprocessing robotic instruments, specifically the common challenges in robotic instrument processing. First of all, I want to touch base on delicate components because unlike standard surgical instruments, when you think of sterile processing, Mayo scissors or, things like that, DeBakey tissue forceps, unlike those type of things, robotic instruments have micromechanical parts, making them susceptible to corrosion or breakage if cleaned improperly. This means that every sterile processing tech have to know the IFUs and exactly what they're doing while dealing with these instruments. Complex IFUs. Each manufacturer provides detailed instructions that must be followed precisely. This includes recommended cleaning solution, soaking times, and assembly protocols. Failure to follow the IFU can void warranties and increase costs. This not following the IFU can lead to way bigger issues in the future. It can lead to it can affect patient safety, OR delays. So it's so imperative to understand the IFU. And this leads me into the high cost of instrument damage. Not knowing the ins and outs of the IFU can lead to instrument damage. And instrument damage leads to high costs for the hospital. Robotic instruments are extremely expensive, sometimes exceeding $20,000 per instrument. Wow. Every reprocessing error can have a major financial impact on the hospital. Errors are essentially life or death in the sterile processing department. We have to follow IFUs and do what we need to do to be the first step in patient safety and cleanliness in the hospital. So not knowing the IFUs can lead to reprocessing errors. And this leads me to start talking about the most common errors, which include incomplete cleaning, improper assembly, and missed inspection steps. Many SPDs combat this by training staff, specifically on robotic instrument sets. Because they're so complex and they're so different from, surgical instruments that when you think of sterile processing, the surgical instruments that are normally used for general surgeries. So SPDs must train staff specifically on robotic instrument sets and learn the IFUs. I feel like we can lead into the solutions and best practices in sterile processing. So, what are some solutions to these challenges? Strict adherence to IFUs. If we as sterile processors strictly follow the IFUs, this will lead to way less errors when it comes to robotic instruments like getting damaged or corrosive. This is non-negotiable. Manufactured IFUs are based on rigorous testing, and they are the blueprint for safe processing. So keep that in mind. IFUs, they're there for a reason, so we must use them. So I want to go into specialized training programs. SPDs should provide focused training on robotic instruments. I feel like because they're so different from regular instruments that we use specific robotic training, so specific SPD training on robotic instruments, even including simulation-based learning for assembly and disassembly. I feel like robotic instruments on its own, it just is, a whole nother ball game. We can also, another solution to the challenges of robotic instrumentation in sterile processing we can always do checklist and double verification. By using a detailed checklist, that ensures that no step is missed. Double verification adds an an extra layer of safety. And we can always use that extra layer of safety when it comes to sterile processing and essentially patient care. And this leads into my next topic as far as documentation. Using checklists and double verification, we can use that to record sterilization cycles, instrument checks, and any deviations to help track performance and quickly identify any issues so they can be resolved in a timely manner. By combining training, checklists, adherence to IFUs, sterile processing departments can minimize errors. They can also preserve instrument longevity and ultimately support successful robotic surgeries. So, to wrap up, robotic instruments are a complex and delicate. They are very complex and delicate, and they require precise, very, very precise handling in the sterile processing department. Following manufacturers' IFUs are very essential for safety, compliance, and instrument longevity. Because, what hospital wants to be spending $20,000 on a robotic instrument every year or even every month, So we have to follow the IFUs and do what we need to do. Training, checklists, and documentation reduce errors. They prevent costly mistakes. Like I said, what hospital really wants to pay $20,000, for the same instrument over and over? So we have to adhere to the IFUs. The sterile processing team is the unsung hero of the robotic surgery, ensuring that every instrument is safe, sterile, and ready for the OR. Now, if you're interested in learning more, you can check out resources from AORN, AAMI, and even peer-reviewed journals like the Journal of Hospital Infection for the best practices in robotic instrument processing. Thank you for tuning in to Robotics in the OR, the unsung heroes of sterile processing. I hope this episode gave you a better understanding of the vital role SPD plays in the modern surgical care. Stay safe, and until then, next time.